He said he would come home by winter. That was 3 winters ago. My name is Elena. I live in a small house by the harbor, the house Daniel built with his own hands before we married. On the morning he left, he held both my hands. He looked into my eyes and said, "I will be home before the first snow." I believed him. I always believed him. Daniel took a job on a cargo ship, sailing far past the horizon we could see from our porch. The work paid well, better than anything on land. Our roof leaked that spring. Our savings had run dry. So he packed one bag, kissed my forehead, and walked down to the harbor without looking back even once. That first autumn, I waited. I counted the days on a paper calendar pinned to the kitchen wall. Every evening, I lit a lamp in the window. Every morning, I checked the mailbox before the sun had fully risen. Letters came at first, short and warm, full of small details. He wrote about the endless gray ocean. He wrote about the men he worked beside. He wrote more than once about missing my cooking. Then the letters slowed. Then quietly, they stopped altogether. The first snow fell in November. I stood at the window and watched it settle over the harbor road, white and silent. I told myself he was only delayed. Ships are unpredictable, I reasoned. Weather changes plans. I told myself this, and I believed it, the way I believed everything Daniel ever told me. Our daughter Sophia was born that same winter. I held her alone in a small hospital room, no husband beside me, only a kind nurse who squeezed my hand when the pain grew sharp. I named her Sophia because it meant wisdom, and I thought someday I will need to explain all of this to her with a wisdom I did not yet have myself. Winter passed. Spring came, green and hopeful, coaxing new leaves from tired branches. Summer followed, heavy and slow with heat. Then autumn again, the same leaves falling exactly as they had the year before. I raised Sophia through all of it, mostly alone. I worked mornings at the bakery on Fisher Street, kneading dough before dawn, carrying her on my back whenever the owner allowed it. My hands cracked from the cold water. My back ached from the long hours bent over the oven. Still, I kept the lamp burning in the window every single night. Still, I waited for him. I trusted him completely. I told Sophia her father was coming home, and I told myself the very same thing. The second winter came and went with no word at all. Neighbors began to speak in quiet voices whenever they thought I couldn't hear. Some said the sea had taken him. Some whispered that he had started a new life somewhere warmer, somewhere easier than ours. I refused to listen to any of it. I scrubbed our floors until they shone. I mended his old coat, still hanging by the door, as if mending fabric could somehow mend the distance between us. By the third winter, even my own resolve had grown thin and threadbare, like that coat I kept patching again and again. Sophia was old enough now to ask questions I could not fully answer. "Where is Papa?" she would say, tugging my sleeve at the window each time snow began to fall. I would kneel down to her height and tell her the same gentle answer every time. "He is coming home. He promised me, and your father keeps his promises." But even as I said the words aloud, a quiet doubt crept into me, cold and persistent, like water seeping under a locked door. One afternoon, old Mrs. Kovach stopped me outside the bakery. She pressed a warm loaf of bread into my hands without a word, then held my arm for a long moment. "Keep the lamp burning, Elena," she said, her eyes steady on mine. "Some men take the long way home." I nodded, unable to speak past the sudden lump in my throat, and carried her kindness home that evening like a small, steady flame. One evening in late December, wind howled outside, sharp enough to rattle the shutters against their frames. Sophia had fallen asleep by the fire, her small hand still curled around a wooden toy. I sat mending, needle moving slowly through worn fabric when I heard it. A knock. Soft, uncertain. Not the confident knock of a neighbor stopping by, but something smaller, more hesitant, almost afraid. I opened the door, and for a moment I did not recognize the man standing there in the dark. He was thinner than I remembered, his face weathered by sun and salt water, a long scar tracing his jaw that had never been there before. His coat hung loose on a frame that used to fill a room, but his eyes, when they finally met mine, were unmistakably his. "Elena," he said, his voice cracking on my name like a branch under snow. I could not speak. I only stood there, one hand pressed to my mouth, the cold night air rushing past us both into our small, warm house. He told me everything later that night, sitting close to the fire, Sophia curled asleep between us both. The ship had been damaged in a storm off a distant, unfamiliar coast. He had been injured, his arm broken in 2 places, and stranded for months in a small port town with no reliable way to send word home. He had written letters, he insisted, letters that never once arrived, lost somewhere between that faraway port and our quiet harbor town. He had thought of us every single day. He had never, not once, stopped trying to come home to us. I searched his face carefully for the truth, and I found it there, plain and unguarded, impossible to fake. Whatever anger I might have carried for 3 long winters dissolved slowly into something softer, something closer to relief mixed with grief for all the time we had lost. "I am sorry," he whispered, his hand trembling slightly in mine. "I am so sorry, Elena. I never meant to break my word to you." "You are here now," I said quietly. "That is what matters most tonight." Sophia stirred and woke briefly, blinking up at the stranger sitting so close by the fire. Daniel reached out slowly, carefully, as though touching something fragile and precious for the very first time. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "I am your father. I told your mother I would come home by winter. I am sorry it took me so long to keep my word." That winter, our small house felt warm again for the first time in 3 long years. Daniel healed slowly, both his body and the quieter parts of him the sea had worn down. He took work on land after that, close enough to the harbor that he never had to leave us again. Some nights, out of pure habit, I still find myself glancing toward the window, half expecting to see snow falling outside, half expecting to feel that old, familiar ache of waiting for someone far away. But then I look across the room instead, and there he is, mending Sophia's wooden toy by the fire, humming some quiet tune from the sea. Spring came early that year, the kind of gentle spring that seems to apologize for a hard winter. Daniel walked Sophia down to the harbor for the first time, her small hand swallowed inside his rough one, and I watched them from the porch, my heart both full and still faintly bruised. Some wounds heal slowly, I have learned, but given enough patient love, they do heal. He said he would come home by winter. It took 3 winters longer than he ever promised. But this winter, and every winter since, my husband has finally been home.